I started driving for Uber back when gas prices first went insane. My day job in graphic design paid the bills, but just barely, and I figured a few extra hours a week driving people around couldn't hurt. I preferred the night shifts. The city is quieter, the traffic is gone, and people are usually just trying to get home from a bar or a late shift at work. It felt simpler. Most nights were exactly that. Simple, boring, and a decent way to make $100. But there's one ride that made me sell my car and never turn on that app again. It was a Thursday in late autumn, and a miserable, soaking rain had been falling since noon. By midnight, the city was washed clean of people. I was about to call it a night when a request came through. The pickup was at a 24-hour diner on the industrial edge of town, the kind of place where truckers and third-shift workers ate in silence under buzzing fluorescent lights. The name was Marcus. The destination was an address 40 minutes out in the county, a place I'd never even heard of. I hesitated for a second, then accepted. One more fare. A man pushed through the diner's glass door and walked quickly toward my car, his shoulders hunched against the rain. He looked to be in his 50s, with a tired, weathered face hidden under the brim of a dark baseball cap. He was carrying a small, black duffel bag that looked heavy. He climbed into the back seat without a word, placing the bag on the floor between his feet. The car filled with the damp, cold smell of his rain-soaked jacket. "Marcus?" I asked, just to confirm. He grunted, a sound that was somewhere between a yes and an acknowledgement that I had spoken. I swiped to start the trip and pulled away from the curb. The first 20 minutes were dead silent, broken only by the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers and the hiss of the tires on the wet asphalt. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror a few times. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't looking out the window. He was just staring straight ahead, past my shoulder, at the road disappearing in front of us. He held the strap of the duffel bag in one hand, his knuckles pale from how tightly he was gripping it. The silence started to feel heavy, like the rain-filled clouds outside. I tried to break it. "Nasty night to be out," I said. He didn't turn his head. Yep, that was it. I took the hint and focused on driving. The GPS guided me off the main highway and onto a series of winding country roads. The streetlights vanished. The rain hammered down harder, and the world outside my headlights became a swirling black void. My phone signal, which had been spotty, disappeared completely. The map on my phone was still working offline, a tiny car icon floating in a sea of green. I was driving blind, completely reliant on a piece of technology that could fail at any moment. The GPS finally announced, "You have arrived." I slowed the car and peered through the rain-streaked windshield. There was nothing there. On our right was a dense forest. On our left was an old, rusted chain-link gate, hanging crookedly between two concrete posts. It blocked a muddy-looking dirt road that snaked off into the trees. There were no houses, no mailboxes, no lights. Nothing. I put the car in park. "Sir, this is the address the app gave me. It looks like we're in the middle of nowhere." For the first time, he turned his head and looked directly at me in the mirror. His eyes were dark and incredibly intense. "The gate's not locked. Just get out, push it open, and drive through." A cold spike of fear shot through me. "I'm sorry, I can't do that. It's a private road, and my car can't handle that kind of mud. I can drop you here if you want." He shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "You don't understand," he said, and his voice was different now. Not hostile, but filled with a raw, frayed desperation. "We have to go in. My daughter is in there." My fear was instantly replaced by confusion. "Your daughter?" He leaned forward slightly. "She ran off with some guy a few months back." a real piece of work. She called me an hour ago, crying, said he's got her in a cabin back in these woods and he won't let her leave. She said if she saw police cars, he'd hurt her. So I can't call the cops. I just need a ride. That's all. Get me to the cabin and then get us both out of here. I'll pay you $200 in cash on top of the fare. My mind was racing. Every horror story I'd ever heard about ride-sharing screamed at me to say no, to end the trip and drive away as fast as I could. This was not my problem. But then I looked at his face in the mirror. He wasn't a monster. He was just a father. A tired, scared man who was trying to save his kid. The story was just plausible enough, just heartbreaking enough to be true. Against every instinct, I made a decision that I will regret for the rest of my life. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I got out of the car. The rain was freezing and soaked through my hoodie instantly. The metal gate was heavy and groaned in protest as I pushed it open just wide enough for my car to pass. I got back in, my hands shaking, and eased the car onto the dirt road. The path was worse than I thought. Mud sucked at my tires, and low-hanging branches scraped against the car's roof. We crawled along in first gear for what felt like an eternity. Finally, through the trees, I saw a faint yellow light. A moment later, a small, dilapidated cabin came into view. "Stop here," Marcus ordered, his voice a low growl. "Leave the engine running." I pulled over about 50 yards from the cabin. He opened his door and got out. He moved with a purpose that terrified me. He didn't walk to the door to knock. He stalked toward it and kicked the wooden door with all his might. It splintered and flew open. He rushed inside. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, the engine humming, the wipers still slapping back and forth. I heard shouting, a man's voice, young and panicked. Then Marcus's voice, roaring with a fury that didn't sound like a rescuer. It sounded like a predator. I heard a crash, the sound of glass shattering, then a scream. It was a woman's scream, but it wasn't a scream of relief. It was a scream of pure, abject terror. It was followed by a sound I will never forget, a heavy, wet thump, then another, and another. Silence. The cabin door creaked open. Marcus stepped out into the faint porch light. He was alone. He calmly wiped his hands on a dark rag he pulled from his pocket. He turned and looked right at my car. The expression on his face was not relief. It was not the face of a loving father who had just saved his child. It was cold, grim, and utterly satisfied. He started walking back toward the car. In that moment, my paralysis broke. My eyes darted to the back seat where he had been sitting. His duffel bag was still on the floor, but it had tipped over. The zipper was partially open. Sticking out of the opening was the dark, wooden handle of a claw hammer. He wasn't rescuing his daughter. Maybe she was never even in there. He had used me. He had used my car and my sense of pity to get him to this place. He hadn't brought me here to be a savior. He had brought me here to be his getaway driver. He was halfway to the car when my brain finally started working again. I didn't wait for him to reach the door. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, spun the wheel, and stomped on the accelerator. The tires spun wildly in the mud, then caught. The car shot backward, swinging around in a wide, messy arc. I yanked the shifter into drive and floored it. I didn't look back. I just drove, my heart pounding in my throat, branches screeching against the windows. I hit the paved road and pushed the car faster than I ever had before. I didn't slow down until I saw the bright, safe lights of a gas station 10 miles away. I pulled over next to a pump, shaking so hard I could barely unbuckle my seatbelt. I found my phone and called 911. I gave them the location of the dirt road, told them what I heard, and hung up before they could ask for my name. I never heard anything about it again. I scoured the local news for weeks, searching for any mention of a crime at a remote cabin. Nothing. It was as if it never happened. But it did. I was there. And I still wake up some nights with the sound of that horrible final thump echoing in my head. I sold my car the next week. I couldn't stand sitting in that driver's seat anymore, knowing I had been a willing accomplice to a monster